Hi there, I'm Stacy from Watercolor Together, and today I thought I would share with you my 3 watercolor kits. I use one that I have at home, and I have it always ready to go so that it's easy for me to sit down and paint at any point in time whenever I can find the time, usually after work, before I go to bed, and then I always try to make some time on the weekends. And then I have one watercolor kit that is contained in a caddy, and that I keep on my shelf, packed and also ready to go so that I can grab it and take it with me, whether I'm going camping, if I'm going to a friend's house to paint, if I'm going to my dad's house and I want to paint while I sit and visit with him. So, and basically it's a smaller version of what I keep at home. And then I have one last kit that was a gift from a friend, and it is like a super miniature kit. It's super cute. And so I can pop that right inside of my purse or backpack or something like that, so that if I'm out and about and I decide that I need to paint something, I always have paints with me. And so I just thought it would be really fun to show you kind of the space that I do my painting in, but then also how I store my supplies, what I feel like I need to have. I'm kind of a mix. I'm not really a maximalist, and I'm not a minimalist. I'm somewhere in between. So I like having all of the tools that I feel like I'm using all the time, but I don't feel the need to collect things just for the sake of collecting them. And so that's kind of how I approach my art room in general. And I'm also a sewer, and so my sewing, I approach my sewing that way, and then definitely my watercolor supplies. All right, I'm going to turn the camera around and we'll start with the cart, I think. Okay, so I am lucky to be able to have a space that I can use dedicated for crafting and art. I think I'm going to give you kind of a behind the scenes look. I have my sewing things in here, my art things. I also have a spot for working when I work from home. You can see I've got my tripod set up there that I take up and down for when I'm making a video. And then this is my table. I use it for cutting if I'm sewing, and I use it for painting. But as you can see, the sun comes in these windows and it creates some shadows in a way that it would be almost impossible to paint. This is in the afternoon usually. It's great for morning and evening. Most of the times I'm painting in the evening, so it's not a problem. But that is one of the reasons I like to keep my watercolor supplies in this cart, because that way, if the sun is coming through and I can't paint at my art table, I can go into my kitchen breakfast nook or my family room. I have other places that I can set up. So this is the cart that I use. It's from IKEA, and I added some side cups and some hooks. So, we'll just go through what is in here. In the top, this is kind of, I use this as a secondary working surface. So if I'm working in the family room, I have a very small table to work on, and then I can use this as an extension. But if I'm working in the kitchen, at the counter or something like that, then usually I empty this stuff all up onto whatever table I'm working on. You can see I've got my water jars, tray, paper towels, all just set up and ready to go. I do try to always leave this ready to go. I find it's much easier to sit down and paint if all of your supplies are just ready for the next thing. If you have to walk in and clean things up before you can start, you're less likely to start. So I do try to clean up at the end of every painting session to make sure that I can just sit down and start the next day. All right, this is my spray bottle for hydrating my watercolor paints. Sponge, I keep a sponge I go through less paper towels that way. I use this for dabbing extra water off of my brush. And then over here, I have, that's kind of a section of drawing things. I have my permanent felt tip markers in different sizes. There's like a Posca pen in here in white. There's a Posca pen in black. And so this is just for drawing. And then here are my pencils for either sketching or making a transfer. This is a recycled spice jar, but it's just the right size. And so I really like using a mechanical pencil. So that's what I have. And then I've got pencil sharpener in this little jar with shavings. That way I don't have to empty it out every time I want to sharpen a pencil. And these are my kneaded eraser, regular eraser, and a little smudger stick here for sketches. I've got my brush cleaner. I keep a pinch pot of salt so that I'm not, if I want to use salt for texture, I've got it right here. It's easy to grab. And then here are some clips for if I'm working in a sketchbook and I want to just like clamp those pages down. And then these are my paintbrushes. One day I'm going to do a video about my brushes, I think. Not today, but this is the set that I use very regularly. And so it's just in this great little jar one of my girls made for me. Okay, and then there are these hooks that you can get from IKEA. And so I've got these on the side. And I've got a kitchen towel here. I use that. I roll it up underneath of my board in order to change the angle of my paper, or I have it to, if I have a spill, which I haven't had yet, but just in case. And then over here you can see there's another hook, and I have some ribbon tied on my clipboards. So I can use those to tape my paper down to. I have these 3 little cups that hang off the side. You can get these at IKEA as well. And I have my craft dryer for drying the paper between layers. Then this is where I keep my tape. So I've got some washi tape and some masking tape. I also have this tool. This is a sewing tool. It is made for shishiko fabric marking, but it's this really high quality hard plastic that goes down to a very thin edge. It works incredibly well for removing paper out of a block. So that's what I use it for. It's available for sewing, marking things out. It's great for like if you're doing some quilting, you can use this to mark your quilting pattern for straight lines. But I use it more for taking watercolor paper off of a block. Okay, so kind of a dual purpose tool. And then these, I don't keep my paper towel. I like my paper towels already off the roll so that if I need one, I can grab it really quickly. I'm not like fiddling around. So that's what that is. And then anytime I cut down paper, I save the scraps and I pop them over here. I can use them for testing paint swatches or paint mixes before I go to my paper. All right, so that is kind of the top section area, and I'm going to spin it around here so that we can have better access to the next layer. So this is where I store my paint, and I use 2 sets of paints depending on what I'm painting. I like Daniel Smith. I have a mix of Daniel Smith and Rembrandt colors that I use if I'm painting landscapes or I'm doing very loose paintings. And then I have a set of Mugello Mission Gold paints that I use if I'm doing still lifes or florals because they paint out a little bit tighter. The just properties are pretty different between the 2 sets. And so they complement one another really, really well. And then these are some really cute little, I think they're made by Arteza. Yes. And they're like some really cute little metallic and sparkle paints. And so I just have these off to the side. They're fun for if I'm doing like card making or something like that. And then you can see here I have a jar of swatches. These are for my Mugello paints. I need to make one for my Daniel Smith. But what's nice is that on the back it has all of the pigment information. All right. Oh, and then I have a ruler. There's a ruler here, which is just great. I actually could probably hang that somewhere. But anyway, and then one thing I utilize all the time is swatch charts. So I made my own color wheel. This is my Daniel Smith set of paints. I need to make one for my Mugello Mission Gold paint. So maybe I'll do a video of that so that if you want to make one along with me, you can. And then I keep all of these, like these are green mixes. I find these really, really useful if I'm painting a landscape or florals and I want to make sure that I'm getting a specific green. I can pull these charts out and find what I'm looking for. And then these are my 2 swatch charts for both sets of paints. This is my Daniel Smith set of paints. Well, it's a mix of Daniel Smith and Rembrandt. And then this is my Mission Gold paints. So anyway, there we go. And I'm not, like I said, I'm kind of in between, right? I have 2 sets of paints, but I only have 24 tubes of 2 sets of paints. So I don't feel the need to collect every paint that was ever made. I'm really happy with what I have. They both have distinct purposes, but I'm also not so minimalistic that I'm only using 6 mixing tubes. So kind of like that in between, right? Okay, and then on the bottom rack, I have my papers. I really like Bao paper, so I have a couple of pads of that. And what is nice about this cart is that this bottom rack is pretty sizable, and so it holds up to this is a 10 by 15 pad, and that fits in the bottom, which is really nice. So now sometimes I do paint on bigger paper, and if that's the case, I have some bigger boards here that I can use. They're like masonite boards and a bigger clip, like one of those big art boards. I can tape my paper down to, and then underneath of this table, there's like a little slot here for storing large paper. So, yeah. All right, so I think that's it. That is my main kit that I paint with from home, and I'm using this kit 90% of the time. All right, so let's take a look over here. on my shelf. And so this is where I have my other two paint kits. This is my caddy that I take for traveling, and then this is my mini kit. So let's go through the caddy first. I'm gonna pop the camera up in the tripod, and then we can take a peek at all of the things that I bring with me when I'm gonna paint kind of on the go. Okay, so this caddy, it was made by Art Bin, and I don't know that it's made anymore. One of the nice things is it has this drawer that slides out of the bottom, and it's really great for keeping things organized. I think the newer styles might have something on top, but what I like about this being open on top is that my larger things can stick up. And so I'm not quite sure. I had gotten this quite some time ago, but I don't think they make this exact caddy anymore. Okay, so what I have in here is a repeat of what's in my cart, just either a smaller amount or in smaller sizes. Like I still have my brush cleaner and conditioner. I just have a little bitty one. My clips, they're smaller size clips. I keep my utensils, like drawing utensils are all over here, including kind of the same eraser that I use in my big cart. I really like these mechanical pencils, so of course I have one of those here. My kneaded eraser. I have some extra sponges. I should probably these maybe fit in one spot. I don't know. Anyway, I've got washi tape, and then, okay, so I'm kind of a brush snob, and I use really good brushes. And if I'm going to paint sometimes if I take my caddy somewhere, I'm painting with somebody who is brand new, and then I don't like to share my really good brushes. So I have a set of craft brushes that I don't mind letting anybody use, even if it's like a child or it's somebody who's really inexperienced and doesn't know how to care for brushes. So anyway, that's what sits in here. And then I've got some other tools, like I've got a pipette here. I've got like a stiff little stencil brush that's great for bokeh effect, and another like gift card that I can use for tracing or as a tool. All right, and then, whoops, inside of the actual caddy, and this drawer opens from either side, which I also really like. So I can pull it out from, and it does click in nicely, so it's never opened on me when I don't want it to open. So it's really well designed. All right, and then I keep a board. I probably could get a clipboard for here, but I'm kind of a cheapskate, so I just use the bottom of this was a paper block, because the cardboard's pretty thick, and I can use that to tape my paint down, and then if it gets too wet and it starts getting warped, I just toss it, and by that time I usually have a new paint block back that I can use. And then I keep in paper for whatever I happen to be working on. So like the last time I used this caddy, I was camping, and when I'm camping, I love to paint wildflowers. So this is my wildflower sketchbook. So you can see I have some wildflowers that I find while we're out camping. So I just like to take photos, and then I make little paintings right there at the campsite. So this is usually in my travel caddy, because I usually take this camping. And then I'm also working on a series of mini landscapes, so I've got some paper for that. Sometimes I'll throw in, this is big enough I can throw a 9x12 pad of paper in here, so that fits in here pretty well if I need to. I keep 2 water jars. I use those for other things as well, like I always have a pair of reading glasses with me, and then I have one thing, this I learned from a friend who was an art teacher, and that is that if you use the metal rings, it prevents the edge of the jars from getting chipped. And so because these are traveling and they might bang around a little bit, I've got these metal rings on here. And so they're just my water jars, but it keeps them from getting broken. And then I've got, of course, a water spritzer and a sponge. And so I keep that in one side. I have a tray. It's not in here right now, but I do have a tray that I can put this on too. It just happens to be on my shelf instead of inside my caddy. All right, so this is a rechargeable fan. It's a turbo fan, so it's pretty strong, and it's got this nice little piece that narrows that airflow down. There is not any heat on it, but it does work really well for drying layers, and it doesn't require a cord. That's why I really like it. I think you can get craft guns that are also rechargeable that do have heat, but I don't find I need heat. Just the air is fine. And then I have my masking tape, my little strips of test paper strips. Oh, actually, you can see one here. I had picked a palette for a painting, and so I keep those in here. And then I've got some paper towel already pre-cut. I always have a color wheel. This is just a standard purchase color wheel. It's kind of like a nicer, smaller size. I use my color wheel all the time. I just really like to have it with me. And then this is the same brand of palette that I use for my home palette, but instead of holding 24 colors, it holds 18 colors. And so this is my mix of Daniel Smith and Rembrandt paint, and that's what I travel with. I don't bring my Magella paint with me. I just use that at home, but this is kind of my must-have paint. And same, just like with the larger palette, this does come out, which is really nice for cleaning. And, oh, you can see I have my swatch chart here. So these are the 18 colors I feel like I have to have. All right, and then the other thing is that this is by Art Bin, and it is so nice. It is a brush holder, and it's longer, so it holds a longer handled brush, as well as, you know, you can do your shorter handled brushes like I have here. Now, I don't have two sets of my silver black velvet brushes. This 1/4 inch striper, I use this for petals, and so I keep it in here because if I'm painting wildflowers, I like to have it. But I do have to move my larger size 14 from my home kit to here. One day I would like to have 2 larger brushes so I don't have to do that. And then the other brush that I move back and forth is I have like a 1-inch flat brush for washes. And I only have one of those as well. So, you know, for budgetary reasons, I try to only add things when I have to. And so for right now, I swap those 2. Eventually, I'd like to have a full set of brushes for both kits. All right. And then the other things that I have in here are, I have some white acrylic with a little pot that I can use to paint. If I need some, you know, if I need to add some white highlights to painting at the end. I really like this. It's like white acrylic ink. And then the other thing is I have some masking fluid. I think actually this needs a good shake or something, or maybe it's getting old and it needs to be replaced. Anyway, it's in here. I think it needs a good shake. Okay. And then I had gotten this with one of my kneading pads. Oh, Belly. No. I have a dog who's looking out the window right now, and she likes to bark at anything. Okay, so this I use to, it's a tool that came with a kneading pad, and it's great for separating pages out of the block. I like my Shishiko pen better, so that's the one that I use in my home kit, but this is good for on the go. Okay, and I think that's everything that I have in this kit. So what I'm going to do is pop these things back in, and then let's get that super tiny mini kit out and go through it because it's just super, super fun. I would say that it is not something that you have to have, but it's so nice to be able to throw it in a backpack, like I said, or a purse or whatever, and so that you always have your painting things with you, kind of no matter what. I love that idea. And it is so adorable. All right, so I'm going to take the camera back out of the tripod because I want to be able to show you this in my hand so that you can see the scale because it's just so adorable. All right, so I love this little kit. It is so much fun. It came, I think some of these things came all in the kit and then some things I added, and I did a few little modifications to make it super useful. And so you can see, I'm going to show you the top. There's a very long handle. I tied a knot in it because I find it kept getting tangled up in things, and so it just made it easier for me to use by tying a knot in it. And then this kind of strings through this flap. And so you can't take it off. You definitely need to leave it on so that you have this little handle. But what I did was I used these little tiny clips, and then I have a little bit of braided string here, and I sewed that through the sponge so that the sponge could hang on one side, and then I strung it through a couple of rolls of washi tape that are 2 different sizes, and I can always replace this at any time. And then the other thing that I did to modify this is that on the back, I wanted a board that I found this board, I think it was at Hobby Lobby in the craft section. And so I have a pencil that slips in here so that I can do a little bit of sketching. And then in order to hold the board, I added 4 holes in the back of the pouch. So I have it's called a crocodile, and so it's a hole punch. It's made for paper, but it's also made for other materials, and so it was able to punch through this little vinyl material pretty easily. And so I was able to tie some elastic onto the back, sort of like a backpack would be, but then that holds that board for me, and so it just makes it pretty useful. All right, so let's look at what's inside of this adorable kit. And you see, it is so small. It is like the size, you know, barely bigger than an apple. And so it would absolutely fit in like a backpack, a briefcase, a purse, even in the, like, I don't know about leaving it in the heat, but if it's not super hot out, you could just leave it in your like glove box of your car or something like that. Okay, so inside is everything you need, the combination of inside and outside, in order to paint. And so what it came with is this really adorable little palette, which we'll go through. It's so teeny. This is both the palette, mixing trays, and the water cup. What I was able to find on Amazon is this teeny little jar. So it is for, I think, a perfume atomizer or something like that, but this works really well for hydrating your paints. And so I've got that filled with water. And then it also the kit itself came with a travel brush. Now this travel brush it's pretty stiff, it's synthetic, and so what I would like to be able to do at some point is replace it with a Da Vinci travel brush. I just have to save up for that because they're pretty pricey, but I do paint with Da Vinci brushes at home and I really enjoy using them. So at some point I would like to add a Da Vinci brush. It could be pretty small because all of these paintings are really small, so it doesn't need to be anything bigger than like maybe a size 4 or size 3, something like that. But anyway, this is what the kit came with, and which is nice that you have something to use. And then I have little bits of paper towel. I just cut up into these tiny little squares. I use my scissors, and I can use these if I, you know, for blotting up if I want to do, if I need them. And then the kit came with some paper. It was like kind of this rounded corner paper. It also came with a little swatch card, so you can fill out the swatch card. So these are the paints that came in the kit. There's no pigment information, and I think once I have used up this paint, I will be very happy to fill it up with my own paints, and I'll probably use my Daniel Smith colors. But it does have 9 slots, which is a pretty good collection of paint when you're talking about such a miniature set. And then I cut down some additional paper. I have some little paper squares, and I have some little landscape style papers that I can use. And I do paint with it. I have a lot of fun making these little mini paintings. So you can see I've got some little mini things in here right now. Usually if I paint these little mini paintings, I love to give them away. They're super fun to like just hand out to somebody who is interested in what you're doing. Okay, so now let's look at the actual paint palette. Excuse me. Okay, so this slips, like the palette itself slips inside of this container. This becomes your water container. So you will have to have some source of water, whether that's a fountain or your water bottle or something like that. Oh, excuse me. I have dry throat. Sorry about that. I needed a drink of water with all this talking I'm doing. Okay, so here you have the water cup, and then this is the palette itself. And what's really nice, this is like a really sturdy, nice plastic, and you open it up like this, and then it has these little mixing trays that fold out, and they fold out on either side. And I have found, like, they're so tiny, but there's plenty of space. When you consider the size of your paper, there's plenty of space in these mixing trays, so it works out really, really well. And there's a relatively, like, they've got a some kind of version. They've got a yellow and orange and a red, and then there's a quinacridone rose. This is like a violet or lilac-y color, and then there's, I would say this is similar to a kind of a cerulean blue or kind of a cobalt blue sort of color a little bit, and then this is like an ultramarine color. There's a green that I would say is similar to Viridian, and then down here is like a Payne's gray. And so you do have a nice selection of colors that come with it, There's no pigment information or anything like that, so I don't know that they're particularly high quality paints, but they definitely work well enough for these little mini paintings. And then once I use these up, then I'll pick my favorite 9. I'll probably do like a warm and cool red, a warm and cool yellow, a warm and cool blue, and a quinacridone rose, because I can't paint without that. And then, I don't know, maybe a Payne's gray or a burnt umber, probably burnt umber, because I really like painting with burnt umber. But anyway, it's just such a cute little set. And what's really nice is if you take the, I tape my paper down to the bottom half of the board, and then I hold this like that, see? And I can put my thumb right on the edge of this, and it all kind of stays up so that I can hold it like this and paint well. And then this cup hangs off of the side here, so that I have my water. I mean, I really can work just one-handed, and once my paper is taped down, and I cut my sponge to fit inside of this lid just right, and then the other thing that fits just right is my water bottle. So I didn't take my sponge off. I would have to unclip it, but it fits right in there. So I can just hold this with my thumb, and then this is really easy to pull out and paint anywhere. Literally, you could be sitting on the bus or at a picnic table, you know, kind of wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you can stop and pull this out and make whatever little mini painting that you like. So I love this kit, and I think it's super fun. I'm pretty sure it came from Amazon, and I think the brand was fun too. So check that out for sure. My friend gifted this to me for my birthday, and I just love it. I use it all the time. Okay, so I think that's it. Those are the 3 paint kits that I have. My paint kit at home, my paint kit for when I'm doing traveling, or, you know, I know I'm gonna go painting somewhere, and then this little tiny kit that I can keep in my purse or backpack for if the inspiration suddenly hits. It's kind of like that kit that's there for spontaneously painting at any point in time. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please, I think either the subscribe button is going to be here or it's going to be here. I don't know. I can never quite figure that out. So one of these spots, hit subscribe. And what I want to do is I'm not going to do a lot of review things, but maybe where, like, I just want to share some of my favorite supplies. I'm not going to review everything. I'm not somebody who buys everything, so I can't tell you what the best paintbrush is or the best paint is. I can just tell you what it is that I really like working with. So I think I'm going to do some of those videos here and there. So if you like this, make sure that you check back. All right, thanks so much for watching.